Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today I'm joined by Australian tech industry veteran Dave Stevens. Now, Dave is the founder and managing director of Australian IT systems integrator Brennan, and it's an organisation that he established back in 1997. Dave, a warm welcome to you, and thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks, mate. Good to be here. Haven't been called a veteran for a while, so that's nice.
Okay, good. Very good. Very good. Well, you are. All right. Listen, now, Brennan is, of course, and a lot of people watching this will know that you work with organisations in the mid-market, and it's fair to say that in Australia, this is a crowded, competitive and somewhat loyal customer segment. Now, a big challenge for a lot of organisations in this market, and this comes out in Adapt's data, is a lack of funding for tech and cyber initiatives, and it's often a number one barrier. Now, Brennan is trying to help organisations with this issue with your recent fixed fee, fixed outcome guarantee to combat cost overruns. Let me start by asking you, Dave, I mean, in your view, what are some of the key reasons that cost blowouts are occurring here in Australia on tech projects at the moment?
Yeah, good point. Good question, I should say. So there's a part of our businesses in the mid-market. The bulk of our business is in gov and enterprise.
Yep.
So we're really well placed to see the differences, around the way that those three, sized customers go about, delivering or, speccing projects, I should say.
Yeah.
So one of the main reason for project blowout in the mid-market is scope control. It's having the customers having the discipline to control this, to well document the scope in the first instance. Having dug into all the different features and functions that they want and business outcomes, and then having the discipline to not start just adding features and functions in as they go. And we see that more prevalent in the mid-market than in the other customer segments.
Yeah.
And the second kind of, which is almost related, is to listen to their project partner, i.e. Brennan in this case, when we do identify that something's out of scope, to then, have the, discipline to agree to just take that aside and put it in a backlog or into a version 1 and continue with that minimum viable product kind of approach in the first instance. So, one small change leads to 2, leads to 10, and you just boil the frog on this stuff.
Yeah,
all
for
of a
sure.
sudden, you're delivering is nothing like the project you started.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to meet expectations that way.
Yeah, totally agree. It's interesting. I was having a conversation with a former CIO last month for this newsletter, and she said that one of her biggest frustrations working with vendors was when they concealed the hidden costs of IT, so costs that weren't uncovered until she was fully invested. And she makes a very good point there. I mean, do you see that this is an issue in the market, and is it a key reason that you, I guess, introduced this initiative as well?
Yeah, 100%. So that is what we call dream selling. So it's where you're doing 2 things. You're selling a customer an unrealistic set of business outcomes at an unrealistic cost.
Yeah.
And it's generally done very well by the biggest of the vendors out there. And there's a set of, channel partners who kind of ride on those coattails and, go along with that kind of dream selling. And then it's a matter of just kind of producing those hidden costs as the project gets, it carries through its natural cycle. That infuriates CIOs.
Yeah, for sure.
Need at the very start of a project or before they sign it off is a cast iron set of deliverables with a cast iron cost attached.
Now, to play devil's advocate a little bit here, I mean, do you agree that sometimes there are situations where goalposts move during a project? And secondly to that, isn't the onus a little bit on the customer as well when scoping to allow for these unforeseen changes to cost and people resources?
Yeah, 100%. So they should have 20% contingency up their sleeve or 30% or whatever the case might be, because goalposts do move and understanding of systems move. So as we're delivering or as we're in doing the the detailed design, which will be the first step of lots of projects, we discover things that the customers don't even know. So it's wise for the CIO to have 30% contingency in their back pocket, so they don't have to go back to the CFO, for those kind of mundane shifts in, goalposts. But it's also kind of needs to be a tacit agreement, or an open agreement between the partner and the customer that we're going to be rigorous on change. When we find something different, we'll raise a change request.
Yeah.
Because it's not just elapsed time or effort or costs that might change, it's the actual deliverables as well.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
When you get into UAT, it's hard to test, right, if you haven't got enough data.
Yeah, for sure. Now, we're going to get to CFOs in a second, but I just wanted to ask you, how have customers responded? It's been 2 months since launch.
Yeah, really positively. We've seen a significant uptake or uptick in the selection of fixed price as an engagement model. It is a different way of delivering, yet we are forced by the economics to be more rigorous on change, and the net result of that is I think we're delivering better quality projects, and there's more phase 2s rolling through as well as we do accurately backlog what can't be achieved in the fixed price engagement.
Yeah, good. Now let's switch gears a little bit, talk a little bit about AI. I mean, developing an AI strategy is a top 5 goal for CIOs this year. That comes out in our research. But what's particularly telling is CFOs and their attitudes towards it. They tell us, and the majority of the CFOs that we speak to, 80% are not seeing value from these technologies. What's your view on how we move the needle a little bit here and get CFOs on board? Because there's a great deal of testing and learning going on, and AI tools are delivering time efficiencies, but there are cost and capacity challenges for a lot of CIOs that I talk to around AI. What do we have to do to sort of get the C-suite, CFOs in particular, on board with this?
I reckon there's only one way. From our place in the market, the best way to get CFOs on board is to go through a bit of a micro-innovation approach. So I won't go into it in huge detail, but work with the customer to understand what the most common, errors in their business are, or rework, or waste, or, sources of inefficiency. And, how often do they repeat and how large are they every time they happen? And you can use AI to, trawl data to understand what they are. Then it's about taking a kind of root cause analysis. Why does that thing go wrong so often? Let's put an automation in place that, that removes the problem, the root cause itself. And then let's stand up an AI that goes and looks for those sets of conditions about to occur in a customer transaction or in a shipping a container or whatever it might be, and then start to, either suggest to an operator that automation's triggered to, save that error from occurring, or, ultimately in the future, the AI identifies the error and, runs the automation. They just let you know that's happening.
Yeah, the micro-innovation approach is a good one, and it's obviously something that Brennan is pushing at the moment, because if something goes wrong, then you don't really, you can recover. You don't really lose much, right? You're not sort of knee deep in something, and you've spent a lot of time and money on it. So that's a good way of looking at it for sure.
The story to the CFO then is, okay, the investment in AI, we had 100 of these errors a month costing us $100,000.
Yeah.
Post the implementation of the AI, we're going to only have 20 and, costing us $20,000 or costing us even less. So we're going to save $80,000 a month. The project's going to cost 100, it'll repay itself within a month. Trust me, I'm going to go, give me the money to go and invest. And if I don't bring you the actual financial outcome, then, let's have a talk about that.
Yeah, for
sure. When I do bring you the outcome, then trust me again.
Trust me again to do it.
That's a bit of a cycle. So that's how we like to go about that.
Dave, are you seeing AI having where are you seeing it having the most impact at the moment? Are you able to sort of, when you look across your customer base, are there any particular areas that stand out?
On the really big end of the customers in banking and, insurance, all that sort of stuff, they're using it to assist with decision making around credit and credit decisions and all that sort of stuff. And but we see that as being really at the large end of town. What we're seeing, say, in our own business is the automation of password resets. So we can do that entirely using a combination of voice AIs and decision-based AIs that essentially, know that Byron's calling, and before the AIs answer the phone, it's looked up and seen that you've had 5 unsuccessful attempts to log in, that your account's locked and you've probably forgotten your password. So the AI answers the phone and says, "Hey, Byron, how are you? I see your account's locked. Have you forgotten your password?" And you say, "Yes, I have." AI texts you your new password and says, "Would you like to try and log in?" We see that login successful. We say, the AI says, "Is there anything else I can help you with?" No, all done. And that gets a 92 MPS in our work.
Yeah, great.
As opposed to our average service desk transaction gets an 82.
Yeah, okay, so that's a good improvement.
Zero cost. Very close to zero cost to deliver.
Yeah, nice. Now, Dave, I want to talk a little bit about the economy. At least a few integrators have told me over the past few months that 2024 was a bit tough, with one saying that there was a bit of a period of hibernation that prolonged buyers' decisions on new tech investments. I mean, we are seeing global economic uncertainty at the moment. There's this tariff flip-flopping that's going on with the US government. So it's going to have some impact on the industry here. I mean, what are your customers, partners and suppliers saying at the moment? What's your outlook?
I agree. 2024 as a calendar year was, pretty tough. We grew single digits organically during that phase, and we would often, regularly grow at double-digit organic. We track the financial results of about a dozen of our competitors. We saw half of them go backwards, and we saw half of them have zero growth. I think there's one other competitor have similar growth to us. There's a bit more growth via acquisition. So it's a tough economic environment out there. Look, as it stands today, I think the macro environment is absolutely not being helped by all this kind of tariff flip-flop and just the general uncertainty about trade. But we haven't seen it. Like the pipelines are strong, the financial results are strong. It's not customers making decisions. We've got a few customers in the transport industry, international. And they're, understandably a little bit nervous. But I don't think we've seen it really hit in the economic data yet either. Out of the States, the economic data today was, jobs are still relatively strong, but that's March data. So I think the worst of the uncertainty could be yet to play out. But it can't be doing it.
What's that, sorry? It can't be doing any good.
Any good, yeah.
No, for sure. It feels a bit schizophrenic at times. It's just backwards and forwards, and there's so much uncertainty around it. So
lots of time and energy wasted on it, and
for
we're
sure.
just kind of keeping our head down and working twice as hard as we did last year, basically.
Yeah. Now, Dave, a big topic for you is the local industry. Now, you said recently in Tech Partner News that you're not comfortable with Australian tech firms playing second fiddle to international competitors, and I think most local players would certainly agree with you. Now, state and federal governments in Australia are sort of moving away from some of these multinationals, relying less on them to provide IT consulting services, and that's a good thing, giving the local players a bit more of a go. I mean, how do local providers convince government and private organisations that they have the mettle and the capabilities to deliver the IT services that they need? I mean, is it just a perception thing, or do investments need to be made now, and if so, where?
Yeah, it's not a perception thing. So the state and fed governments do want to buy local and do a reasonable job of supporting the local industry. But we need to have an increased level of maturity and scale across a number of players. There's probably 2 or 3 local players, that are equivalent to our size, a little bit smaller. And we do well in FedGov, in the smaller agencies, but we've got to stop selling our companies to the Indian IT outsourcers or the Japanese or the Americans. We've got to, take those, one publicly listed company and a couple of private companies out there that are similar scale to us, and we've got to invest and acquire ourselves and grow. And we'll naturally win more than our fair share of state and federal gov because we're sovereign. Our tax dollars stay here. Our employment dollars stay here. So I think it's a fait accompli, but we've just got to invest.
So don't sell out to overseas organisations. All the merger and activity should be happening at a local level.
I reckon. And look, that's for each individual founder to make their own decision when their journey finishes and all that sort of stuff. So I wouldn't be so bold as to say that. But there is an opportunity. I strongly, encourage our peers to, and if they're going to sell to each other, like roll up locally and, don't let PE do it because they're just going to, take the lion's share of the premium that you generate as you create scale. Do it yourselves, my competitor. Create another Brennan, and away you go.
Yeah, for sure. And you've done a bit of that yourself over the years. You've been fairly acquisitive.
Yeah, we had a patch in the early 2000s where we did 5 or 6 deals, I think, and then we've recently done another 5 with CBR Cyber in FedGov and Cyber being the latest, 1st of July. So we'll do another 1 or 2 a year as a perpetual kind of investment.
Now, my last question, Dave, is there was IPO talk. Is that still on the cards?
We've never come out and said that IPO is on the cards for us, actually. When asked, we've always said there's nothing planned.
Okay.
We do think it's a valid, source of capital to be considered. But, I mean, the IPO market is tough. The listed market's getting tougher as well, more and more compliance and more of this, the funds flowing into passive investments, like indexed investments. So if you don't make it into the ASX 300, or indeed, more so into the 200, then you're going to miss out on all that passive index-based fund. And, there are less and less active investors out there, professional insto investors. So it's becoming more and more difficult to want to consider that as a source of capital.
No, fair enough.
I must say.
And just lastly on staffing, I mean, in the tech sector, I mean, this skills crisis still continues to bite. We don't have the people that we need. I mean, what's your view on how the problem can be solved long term?
Look, I think that the long-term solution's got to be about, the STEM topics in high school and, university. It's got to be about, fixing the gender mix there as well, and, not just increasing the number of boys that are entering those subjects, but girls as well. And we've just got to have more and more homegrown talent. The world will naturally, flatten out in terms of, where work's done. So work is going to be right-shored to its correct location, save for the state and federal governments, who are very much about sovereign delivery. So that trend will continue. The labour market's a little bit freer now than it has been for 5 years, but it's still difficult to get talent. Right? The talent won the war for talent, 20 years ago. This goes from being a little bit hard to being very hard.
Yeah, for sure.
Difficult.